Some people
This
believe
cold is
death comes
relentless.
quickly,
How much farther?
clean,
Not far now, we'll find
merciful.
shelter.
This
Kara
cold is
Stoneheart
relentless.
knew
How much
better.
farther?
Death was patient. Death took its time. And right now, death was teaching her exactly how slow 43 days could feel when you were tied to a boulder in enemy territory with nothing but shame and starvation for company. The rope around her neck had stopped hurting around day 20. By day 30, she'd stopped feeling the raw burns where the fibers cut into green skin every time she tried to move. By day 40, she'd stopped moving at all, just breathing, barely. Each breath a decision her body made without consulting her mind, which had largely checked out somewhere around the time she'd stopped counting sunrises. The northern Montana forest was preparing for winter with the kind of ruthless efficiency her people would have respected. Leaves fell in slow spirals, gold and crimson, and burnt orange, covering the ground like a quilt stitched from endings. The air carried that particular bite that warned of snow coming, sharp enough to sting what was left of her lungs, cold enough that each exhale felt like surrendering a piece of herself to the wind. Kara's vision had narrowed to a tunnel, peripheral awareness gone. Just a tree directly in front of her, bare branches reaching toward a sky that had turned the color of old iron, gray, heavy, indifferent. She'd spent hours staring at those branches, tracing their patterns, memorizing their shapes, because when you're dying alone in the woods, trees are the only witnesses to your failure, and somehow that felt important. Someone should remember, even if it was just an oak that wouldn't care. Her father's voice still echoed in her head, clear as temple bells, despite 43 days of trying to drown it out. You froze in battle, Kara, while warriors who trusted you died, while the enemy regrouped, while everything our clan stands for turned to ash because you couldn't do the one thing you were trained to do since you were 6 years old. His eyes, the color of old copper, hadn't shown anger. Anger would have been easier. They'd shown disappointment, disgust, the look you give someone who's already dead but hasn't had the decency to stop breathing yet. The memory played on repeat, the human settlement, the raid, the house already burning when she'd reached it. Standard tactics, fire to flush them out, steel to finish what flames started. Except there'd been a child in the doorway, 7 years old, maybe 8, blonde hair catching firelight like it was made of sun, screaming for her mother in a voice that could shatter mountains if mountains had hearts. And Kara had frozen. Not hesitated, not paused to assess tactical options. Frozen. Like her muscles had forgotten every lesson, every drill, every instinct bred into Iron Peak warriors since their ancestors first learned to sharpen stone. Just stood there, sword hanging useless in her hands, staring at a human child who should have been the enemy, but looked exactly like every orc child Kara had ever protected in her own village. Small, terrified, wanting her mother. 3 warriors died while Kara stood paralyzed. Mograth the Bold, who'd taught her to track deer. Surtha Grimhand, who'd shared rations during her first long march. Young Tornak, barely 16, who'd looked up to Kara like she was something worth admiring. All 3 cut down when the humans rallied, when the element of surprise evaporated, when the raid turned from conquest to retreat. Her father, Thorgrim the Unyielding, had pronounced sentence in front of the entire clan. No trial, no defense. Orc law was simple. Freeze in battle, you die. But you don't die quickly. You don't die with honor. You die slowly in enemy lands, so your shame can't contaminate clan soil. They'd bound her wrists, bound her ankles, wrapped rope around her neck 3 times tied with a knot so deliberately complicated it was clearly meant to humiliate rather than strangle. A mark. A sign. This is what happens to warriors who remember they have a conscience. They'd carried her 3 days into human territory. Deep enough that even if she somehow survived, she'd never find her way back. Deep enough that her death would be Montana's problem, not theirs. Then they'd propped her against a boulder near an old game trail, cut the bindings on her ankles, so she could theoretically walk if she wanted to die faster by trying, and left. No ceremony, no final words, just the sound of boots on fallen leaves growing fainter. Then silence. The first 2 weeks were rage and bargaining, pure fury at her father's rigidity, at the clan's blindness, at herself for caring about a human child. She'd tried everything to free herself. Rubbing rope against stone until green blood stained the dirt, working the knots with her teeth until her lips cracked and bled. When physical escape failed, she bargained with ancestors, with spirits, with the indifferent universe. promising to be better, harder, more like the warrior they'd trained her to be, if only someone would cut these ropes. The third week brought hope, terrible poisonous hope. Every sound became potential rescue. Every bird call a signal. Every branch snap a clan member coming to retrieve her, to tell her it had all been a test that she'd proven something by surviving this long. Hope made time stretch, made disappointment a fresh wound every dawn, when she woke still alone, still dying. By the fourth week, she'd killed hope, methodically, the way she'd been taught to kill enemies. Because hope was the enemy, now it made her want to live, and wanting to live just meant more suffering. So she stopped hoping, stopped counting days, stopped doing anything except breathing and waiting for her body to accept that this was over. Starvation did interesting things to perception. By week 5, Kara could see colors she was pretty sure didn't exist, could hear conversations in the wind that almost made sense, could feel her body consuming itself from the inside out, muscle turning to memory strength, becoming story of the warrior she'd been dissolving into the warrior she'd never be again. Her last coherent thought before the tunnel vision narrowed to a pinpoint, before consciousness became optional, was about the child. The blonde girl in the burning doorway, whether she'd survived, whether Kara's hesitation had saved her or just delayed the inevitable, whether choosing conscience over duty meant anything when you died alone with your choice, when the only witnesses were trees and the only legacy was shame. Then footsteps, heavy, deliberate, human rhythm, not orc. Kara's eyes barely functioned anymore, but she managed to crack them open just enough to see boots. Worn leather, practical, the boots of someone who spent more time with trees than people. Then legs, then a torso wrapped in a thick canvas jacket stained with sap and sawdust. Then a face, human, male, maybe late 30s, but the kind of late 30s that looked 50 because life had been unkind and he'd let it. Gray threaded through dark hair, particularly heavy at the temples, beard more silver than brown. A scar above his left eyebrow that had healed crooked, giving his face a permanent expression of skeptical evaluation, like he was constantly assessing the world and finding it wanting. Blue eyes, cold blue, winter sky blue, the color of water deep enough to drown in. Those eyes studied her with an intensity that should have felt invasive but somehow just felt tired, like he'd seen too much death to be surprised by more. Kara tried to speak, tried to form words, tried to do anything except exist as a barely breathing example of what happens when warriors grow hearts. Her mouth moved, lips cracked, tongue too swollen. No sound came out except a wheeze that hurt enough to make her vision go spotty. The human stood there, not moving, not helping, just looking at her the way you'd look at a complicated problem you hadn't decided whether to solve. His hand rested on an axe handle. The axe was well maintained, sharp, clean. The tool of someone who understood that precision mattered, that details were the difference between survival and slow dying. Kara recognized the look in his eyes, the same look she'd seen in her own reflection before the clan had taken her mirrors. The look of someone who'd lost everything that mattered and built walls so high and thick that nothing could get in to hurt them again. The look of someone who'd chosen isolation over connection because connection meant vulnerability and vulnerability meant pain. She waited for him to leave, expected it. A human finding an orc, even a dying orc, even a clearly punished orc with rope burns and starvation and shame written across every inch of green skin, wouldn't help, couldn't help. Their people had been killing each other for longer than either species cared to remember. Wars built on grudges, so old no one remembered which slight started it all. Just knew that green skin meant enemy, and pink skin meant target, and mercy was what happened to other people in other stories. But he didn't leave, just stood there jaw working like he was having an argument with himself, fierce, internal. The kind of debate where both sides had excellent points and no one was winning. Then he spoke, voice rough, unused to conversation. Damn it. 2 words, barely more than a whisper, but they carried weight. The weight of a decision made against every survival instinct. The weight of choosing something harder than walking away. He set down the axe, carefully. The way you set down a weapon when you're about to do something monumentally stupid and want at least one hand free in case monumentally stupid turns into immediately fatal. Then he knelt, pulled a hunting knife from his belt. The blade caught afternoon light, sharp enough to split air. Kara's body tensed. What was left of her warrior instincts, screaming that this was it, this was how it ended. Quick mercy from an enemy blade. Faster than starvation. Cleaner than exposure. Almost kind in its way. She closed her eyes, waited for the cut. Instead, she felt the rope at her neck go slack. 1 loop, 2 loops, 3 loops. He was cutting it away. Not her throat. The rope. Careful not to nick her skin where the fibers had rubbed raw and bloody. Gentle in a way that didn't match his face or his eyes or the walls she could practically see built around him. The rope fell away. Kara gasped, not because breathing was easier, though it was, but because for 43 days that rope had been her identity, her shame, her punishment, and now it was just discarded fiber in the dirt. The human moved to her wrists, same careful cutting, same gentle handling of someone he had every reason to hate. The bindings fell away. Blood rushed back into her hands, pins and needles that felt like knives. She wanted to scream but didn't have the strength. "Don't try to talk," he said, still that rough, unused voice. Like words were tools he'd forgotten how to use properly. "You're dehydrated, starving. If you try to talk, you'll just hurt yourself worse." He stood, walked to the boulder where he'd set down what looked like a water skin, Cambo, knelt again, squeezed water onto a cloth, pressed it to her cracked lips. Kara's body responded before her mind could process. Reflexive swallowing. Desperate. Animal. He let her have 3 small sips, then pulled back. "Not too much, not too fast. Your stomach's forgotten what water is." Kara stared at him, tried to understand, tried to reconcile enemy with kindness, with the careful way he was keeping her alive when death would have been easier for both of them. Her vision swam, the tunnel narrowing again, consciousness becoming negotiable. But before the darkness took her, she managed one word, barely audible, more breath than sound. Why? The human's face did something complicated, pain and resignation and something that might have been recognition. Like he saw something in her that reminded him of something he'd lost. "Because," he said quietly, "leaving you there to die felt worse than bringing you here might turn out to be." Then he was lifting her, arms under her shoulders and knees. Firemen's carry her weight across his back. She weighed nothing. Starvation had hollowed her out, made her bones without muscle shell, without substance. He adjusted his grip, settled her, and started walking. Kara faded in and out, consciousness coming in waves. When she was present, she noticed details. The rhythm of his breathing, steady, controlled. Like he'd done hard physical labor so long, it was meditation. The smell of pine sap on his jacket. The way he navigated the forest without looking, feet finding purchase on instinct. The strength in his back and shoulders. Not warrior strength, worker strength. The kind you built through years of repetition rather than training. When she was gone, she dreamed. Fractured images, the blonde child in the doorway, her father's disappointed eyes. The 3 warriors who died because she hesitated. The rope around her neck. The shame that followed her even into unconsciousness. Time became elastic. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. The forest passed in patches. Oak, pine, birch. A stream that sang over stones. A deer that watched them pass with eyes that held no judgment. Just curiosity. Just the blank assessment of prey, wondering if predator cared today. Eventually they stopped. Kara managed to open her eyes enough to see a cabin. Small, rough-hewn logs chinked with moss and mud. Single room from what she could tell. Smoke rising from a stone chimney. The kind of place someone built when they wanted to be far from everyone and everything. When solitude was survival and company was threat. He carried her inside. The cabin was exactly what it looked like from outside. 1 room, bed in the corner, fireplace on the opposite wall, table with 2 chairs, though both looked like they'd never held 2 people at once. Shelves with supplies, books, tools, everything in its place because order was control and control was sanity. He laid her on his bed, the only bed. Clean blankets that smelled like wood smoke and solitude. Kara's mind registered the significance. This man lived alone, had lived alone for long enough that giving up his bed felt strange, uncomfortable, the violation of routine. He moved to the fireplace. A pot simmered there, steam rising. He ladled liquid into a wooden bowl, came back to the bed. Broth, he said. No chunks, nothing solid yet. Your stomach needs to remember how to work and before we ask it to do anything complicated. He helped her sit, one arm supporting her back, the other holding the bowl to her lips. Kara drank. The broth was simple. Rabbit, maybe, herbs she didn't recognize. Salt, but it tasted like everything good in the world concentrated into liquid form. Her stomach cramped immediately. Not rejection, recognition. Remembered hunger roaring back to life. Slow, he said. Small sips. I know you want to gulp it down. Don't. She managed 3 sips before her stomach threatened revolt. He pulled back. Let her rest. When the cramping subsided, 3 more sips. Then rest. A rhythm. Patient. Like he'd done this before or understood enough about bodies to know how they worked when they were barely working. After the 10th sip, Kara's vision cleared slightly. The tunnel widened. She could see more than just the face directly in front of her. Could see the cabin in detail. The books on shelves, worn spines, suggesting frequent reading. The tools, each one clean and maintained. The window facing east, presumably to catch morning light. The absolute absence of anything suggesting a second person had ever lived here. How long? She managed. Her voice sounded like gravel dragged over stone. Painful. Rough. How long what? He set down the bowl, grabbed a cloth, wetted in a water bucket by the door, came back. Since they left me. He paused, studied her wrists where the scabs had started forming, the rope burns on her neck, the degree of weight loss. Month and a half, he said. Maybe 2. Hard to say exactly. Didn't count. Stop counting, Kara whispered. When I realized counting made it worse, made me hope someone would come back. She closed her eyes. Hope is poison when you're dying. Silence. The kind of silence that had weight, then rest. I'll bring more broth in an hour. Why? The word came out bitter, confused. Why help me? You're human. She gestured at herself with hands that barely moved, at the green skin, at everything that marked her as a mother, as enemy. We're enemies, have been for longer than you've been alive. So why? He stood there, face doing that complicated thing again. Like he was asking himself the same question and didn't like any of the answers he was finding. Finally, he said, because leaving you there to have felt worse than bringing you here might turn out to be. It wasn't a good answer, wasn't even a complete answer, but it was honest. Kara could hear the honesty in it, the confusion. The man hadn't decided if this was mercy or madness, was still debating, still fighting with himself about whether saving an orc made him compassionate or suicidal. What's your name? Kara asked. He hesitated, like names were dangerous. Like giving his name meant connection, and connection meant vulnerability. Declan, he said finally. Declan Cole. Kara Stoneheart. She tried to extend her hand for a formal greeting, couldn't lift it more than an inch off the blanket. Daughter of Thorgrim Flintborn, warrior of the Iron Peak clan. She paused. Or I was. Before. Before what? The whole story tried to come out at once. The raid, the child, the freezing, the sentence, but her body was shutting down again. Energy spent, she managed. Before I was accused of cowardice in battle. Before they stripped my rank. Before they tied me up and left me to die in your territory. Declan's face went carefully blank. The expression of someone hearing something that confirmed every terrible thought they'd ever had about the world. Standard punishment. Standard for warriors who shame their clan. Death by exposure in enemy lands. If you die, you prove you were weak. If you survive and return, you've redeemed yourself through suffering. Her eyes were closing. Couldn't keep them open. Except surviving is statistically unlikely, so it's really just slow execution with extra steps. She heard him move away, heard the door open, heard the rhythmic bite of an axe into wood, the familiar pattern that emptied his mind of everything except the next swing, the next tree, the next breath. Processing. Thinking. fighting with himself out there among the trees while she fought to keep breathing in here. Kara slept, deep, dreamless, the kind of sleep that comes when your body finally believes it might survive and shuts down everything non-essential to focus on the repair work. When she woke, gray light filtered through the window. Morning, night had passed. She was still alive, still in the bed, still breathing. Declan sat at the table carving something. Small, delicate. He looked up when she stirred. "How do you feel?" "Like I got trampled by a mammoth. Then the mammoth backed up and trampled me again for good measure." "That tracks." He set down the carving, came over with more broth. Same routine, small sips, patient waiting. Let her stomach adjust. "You slept 14 hours. Needed it." She managed more broth this time. 5 sips before cramping. Progress. "What are you making?" He glanced at the table, at the small wooden shape taking form under his knife. "Rabbit," he said. His voice went quieter, harder. "I carved them. Have for 15 years. "Why rabbits?" Declan didn't answer immediately, just helped her with 3 more sips of broth. When she was done, he went back to the table, picked up the carving, held it like it was made of something more fragile than wood. "I had a daughter," he said, not looking at Kara, looking at the rabbit. "Emily, 8 years old, blonde hair she got from her mother, laugh that sounded like bells, used to follow me everywhere asking questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? Why do birds fly south? Why do you have to chop so much wood?" He was quiet for a long moment. 15 years ago, I went to town for supplies. 2-day trip. When I came back, my cabin, my old cabin, not this one, was ash. My wife Sarah was dead. Emily was dead. His voice stayed level through practice and force of will. Orc raid, war party passing through. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong species. The silence that followed was the heavy kind. The kind that pressed down on chests and made breathing feel like work. Kara stared at him. At this human who'd saved her, knowing what he knew. Knowing what her people had done to his people, to his family. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be. You didn't do it. My people did it. My people probably did similar things to your people." Kara's voice cracked. "Maybe not my hands, but orc hands. Human raids on orc settlements, human soldiers burning orc homes. That's how war works. Everyone's the victim. Everyone's the monster. Depends on which side of the blade you're standing on." Declan finally looked at her, really looked at her. Not at an orc, not at an enemy, at another person who understood that loss was universal and grief didn't care about skin color. "Why?" he asked. Same question she'd asked him. "Why would you freeze in battle? Warriors like you trained from childhood don't just freeze." So Kara told him the whole story, the raid on the human settlement, standard tactics, standard objectives. The house already burning when she reached it. The child in the doorway, blonde hair, 7 years old, maybe 8, screaming for her mother, and Kara standing there with sword in hand, unable to move, unable to kill, unable to do anything except see that child and recognize what her entire life had been built on. Violence, conquest, honor that was just a pretty word for theft and murder. 3 warriors died while I stood there, Kara said. Mograth the Bold, Surtha Grimhand, young Tornak, all cut down when the humans rallied, when our element of surprise evaporated, when the raid turned from conquest to retreat. She could feel tears forming. Didn't have the moisture to spare for those. My father pronounced sentence in front of the entire clan. No trial, no defense. Freeze in battle, you die. But you die slowly in enemy lands, so your shame can't contaminate clan soil. Were you? Declan asked quietly. Was I what? A coward. Kara laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the laugh of someone who'd asked themselves that question 10,000 times and still wasn't sure of the answer. I don't know. I froze, couldn't move, couldn't fight, couldn't do what I was trained to do. My brothers in arms had to pull me back while the humans regrouped and killed them. She stared at her hands. They were shaking slightly. Muscle memory of shame. So yeah, maybe I was a coward, or maybe I finally saw what we actually were. What I actually was. A monster setting fire to homes and killing families for clan honor, which is a very pretty word for conquering and theft. Declan set down the wooden rabbit, carefully, the way you set down things when your hands want to throw them. The child, he said, in the burning house. Did she survive? I don't know. We retreated before I could see, before I could do anything except stand there and break. Maybe that's why I saved you, Declan said. When I saw you dying against that boulder, all I could think was, she's someone's daughter too. Maybe someone's sister. Maybe someone's friend. And leaving her there to die wouldn't bring my family back. Wouldn't change anything. Would just add one more death to a world that already has too many. Kara stared at him, at this human who'd lost everything to her people and still chose mercy, still chose to see her as a person instead of an enemy. Thank you, she said, for seeing me as someone's daughter instead of just an orc. Don't thank me yet. You're alive, but you're still in human territory with no clan to go back to. The what happens next part hasn't gotten any easier. He was right about that. 3 days later, they came. Kara had been recovering, slowly, painfully, her body remembering how to be a body instead of a skeleton waiting to happen. Declan brought broth every few hours, then solid food, rabbit stew, bread he'd baked himself. Her stomach protested everything initially, but gradually remembered its job. She'd started moving, short walks around the cabin, stretches to keep muscles from atrophy. Declan watched but didn't hover, gave her space but stayed close enough to catch her if she fell. A strange dance, the distance of strangers with the attentiveness of family. They talked, not constantly. Declan wasn't built for constant conversation. But in the spaces between silence, they shared stories. He told her about Sarah, about Emily, about the life he'd built and lost, about the 15 years since living alone, chopping wood, avoiding connection, because connection meant pain. Kara told him about Iron Peak, about training from age 6, about learning to fight before learning to read, about clan honor and warrior pride and the slow realization that maybe strength wasn't the same as rightness, about the child in the burning house and how that moment had shattered everything she thought she knew about herself. On the morning of the third day, Declan was outside splitting logs. The sound had become familiar, rhythmic, almost comforting. Then it stopped, abruptly. Kara looked up from the book she'd been trying to read, Declan's copy of some human philosophy text she couldn't quite understand. Through the window, she saw him standing absolutely still, head tilted, listening. Then she heard it. War horns. Iron Peak war horns. The kind that echoed through valleys and made prey animals run and told everyone within 5 miles that something large and angry and green was approaching with purpose. Kara's face went cold, then hot, then cold again. Her hands started shaking. Not from weakness now, from recognition, from terror. They found me, she whispered. She moved to the window, looked out at the tree line. Nothing yet, but the horns were getting closer. Maybe half a mile out, maybe less. She knew that sound, had marched to that sound, had killed to that sound. How many, Declan asked. He'd come inside, bow in hand. Not much against a war party, but better than harsh language and wishful thinking. If they sent a proper hunting party, 6 to 8, enough to handle a rogue warrior. Not enough to risk a larger confrontation with human settlements if things go wrong. And if I told them you died already, that they can take your body and go. Kara turned from the window, met his eyes. Those cold blue eyes that had seen too much death and chosen mercy anyway. They'd never believe it without proof. And even if they did, she gestured at herself, at the health she'd regained, at the living body that clearly wasn't a corpse. I'm standing right here alive, which means someone helped me, which means you're a collaborator, which means you're as guilty as I am. Guilty of what? Breaking their law, interfering with clan justice. Her voice was flat, empty, the way people sound when they're reciting facts that happened to someone else. They'll demand recompense. Either you hand me over or they take you instead. Or both. Declan considered this. Weighed options, calculated odds. Came to the conclusion that math was never his strong suit anyway. Third option, he said. I tell them to leave, both of us. That's not how orc law works. Well, I'm not orc, so their law can go to hell. He moved to the door, bow in hand. Stay inside. Don't come out unless I specifically say your name. If things go bad, there's a back window. Run east. Village is 5 miles that way. Ask for Elder Constance. Tell her Declan sent you. They'll kill you. Maybe, but they'll have to kill me on my land. And I'm surprisingly difficult to kill. He glanced back at her. Besides, you asked me earlier why I saved you. This is why. Because mercy doesn't count if you only show it when it's convenient. Real mercy is the kind you show when it costs you something. Before Kara could respond, the war horn sounded again. Closer, maybe a quarter mile, maybe less. Declan stepped outside and closed the door behind him. Through the window, Kara watched the tree line. Watched as shapes emerge from the forest. 7 of them, each one built like they bench-pressed. Bears for fun, war paint in red and black, weapons that had seen use and would see more. And leading them carrying a war hammer that looked like it could punch holes in mountains was a figure that made Kara's heart stop. 7 feet tall, shoulders broad enough to block out the sun, copper eyes that missed nothing, gray threading through dark hair pulled back in traditional warrior braids, scars telling stories of 100 battles, 1,000 victories, a lifetime of choosing strength over everything else. Thorgrim the Unyielding, war chief of the Iron Peak clan, legendary warrior, respected leader, feared opponent, and Kara's father. He'd come himself, hadn't sent subordinates, hadn't delegated, had personally led the hunting party to finish what he'd started when he'd sentenced his own daughter to death by exposure. Kara's legs went weak. She gripped the window frame, watched as the war party stopped 50 feet from the cabin, far enough to assess the situation, close enough to strike fast if needed. Thorgrim stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice carried across the clearing with the weight of absolute authority, not shouting, just stating facts. I am Thorgrim, the unyielding war chief of the Iron Peak clan. We track a marked warrior, Kara Stoneheart. She was left in these woods to die. We have reason to believe she may have survived, maybe in this area. His copper eyes fixed on Declan. Sharp, intelligent. This wasn't a mindless brute. This was a strategist who happened to have biceps the size of Declan's torso. If you have seen her speak now, if you have helped her confess now, honesty will be factored into judgment. Declan lowered his bow but didn't put it down. Judgment for what? Interfering with clan law. Not part of your clan, not subject to your law. You are when you harbor are marked. Thorgrim's voice stayed measured, reasonable, which somehow made it more dangerous. The woman was sentenced to death by exposure. If she lives, the sentence is incomplete. If someone helped her live, that someone has broken our law. I'm sure you understand the position this puts us in. I understand you left someone to die in the woods. I understand I found her dying. I understand I didn't let her die. That's about the extent of my understanding. Then you confess to harboring her. I confess to not being a monster. If that's a crime in your culture needs work. One of the other orcs stepped forward, hand moving to his weapon. Thorgrim raised a hand without looking back, and the orc stopped. Discipline. These weren't random raiders. These were trained warriors who followed orders. You're brave, Thorgrim said. Stupid but brave, I respect that. Which is why I'm offering you a choice that technically isn't in the law books, but feels fair given circumstances. Hand over Kara, walk away, live your life. We'll consider your interference an act of ignorance rather than defiance. He paused meaningfully. Or continue harboring her and we'll consider you complicit, which means you'll both face clan justice. And clan justice looks like what exactly? Trial by combat. You and her against 2 of my warriors. If you win, you both go free. If you lose, you both pay the price she was meant to pay. That's not a trial. That's an execution with extra steps. That's how orc law works. We believe in earning your survival, proving your worth. Words are wind, weapons are truth. Thorgrim tilted his head slightly. You helped her. Admirable. But help without willingness to fight for what you believe makes it shallow. So I'm asking, do you believe she deserves to live enough to fight for it? Inside the cabin, Kara listened to every word, heard her father's voice for the first time in 45 days, heard the ultimatum, Heard Declan being given an out, a way to walk away, to hand her over, to save himself. She wouldn't blame him if he did, wouldn't judge him. He'd already done more than anyone could expect, had saved her life, had fed her, had treated her with more kindness than she'd known from her own clan. If he handed her over now, it would hurt, but it would be fair, logical, the smart choice. She heard Declan's voice, quiet, measured. She's not your property. She's not your punishment to finish. She's a person who made a choice you didn't like. That doesn't give you the right to hunt her down like an animal. So you choose to fight. No, I choose to tell you to leave. Fighting is what happens if you don't. Thorgrim smiled. Kara couldn't see it, but she knew that smile. Had seen it 1,000 times. The smile of someone who'd heard brave words before and watched them crumble under pressure. One human, one bow, one cabin against 7 Iron Peak warriors. He spread his arms. The math isn't in your favor. Math never is. I do things anyway. Kara made her decision, opened the door, stepped out into afternoon light that felt too bright after 3 days inside. Her father's eyes found her immediately. Copper meeting amber, recognition without warmth, assessment without affection. Enough, she said. Her voice carried across the clearing, stronger than it had been 3 days ago, not fully recovered but no longer broken. This human owes you nothing. I owe you nothing. You sentenced me to death. I didn't die. That's not his fault. That's not his crime. That's your justice failing to stick because maybe, just maybe, your justice was wrong in the first place. Thorgrim's expression didn't change, didn't flicker. The copper eyes that had watched Kara take her first steps, that had taught her to hold a blade, that had pronounced her sentence 45 days ago, showed nothing but the cold assessment of a war chief evaluating tactical variables. You froze in battle, he said, each word precise, deliberate. 3 warriors died because of your cowardice. 3 warriors died because we were attacking innocent people for resources we didn't need. Kara's voice shook, not with fear, with anger that had been building for months compressed under 45 days of starvation and shame now expanding like fire finding oxygen. We weren't defending our clan. We weren't protecting our families. We were conquering because that's what we've always done, because that's what honor means to us. Strength through violence, worth through victory. And when I finally saw that for what it was, when I finally couldn't keep lying to myself that burning human homes made us noble warriors, you called it cowardice. She stepped forward, away from the cabin, away from Declan, standing on her own, equal. But courage isn't blindly following orders. Courage is saying no when no is the right answer. The clearing went very quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause. The 6 warriors behind Thorgrim shifted, uncomfortable. These were orcs raised on the same doctrine Kara had been. Strength equals honor. Victory equals worth. Questioning tradition was heresy. And here was a marked warrior sentenced to death, standing in front of their war chief and calling their entire way of life a lie. You shame our ancestors, Thorgrim said softly, the kind of soft that was more dangerous than shouting. Our ancestors were wrong about a lot of things. We'll keep being wrong if we never question what they taught us. Kara moved to stand beside Declan. Not behind him, beside him. This human saved my life when he had every reason to let me die. His family was killed by orcs. He could have walked away, could have let clan justice run its course. But he chose mercy instead of revenge. He chose it to see me as a person instead of an enemy. That's not weakness. That's strength we don't even have a word for. Thorgrim looked between them, human and orc standing together defending each other. An equation that didn't compute in traditional orc war logic. His hand tightened on the warhammer. If I let you walk away, I set a precedent. I tell every marked warrior that survival is possible, that our punishments are negotiable, that clan law bends if you find the right human to hide behind. Good, Kara said. Maybe clan law should bend. Maybe the world changes when we stop being so rigid we break. For a long moment, Kara thought this was it. Thought 7 orcs were about to demonstrate exactly how rigid Iron Peak could be. Thought she was about to learn whether mercy was worth dying for. Then Thorgrim lowered his weapon slightly. Trial by combat, he said. You and the human against 2 of my warriors. Standard rules. Fight until yield or death. If you win, you both walk free. Clan law satisfied through combat. If you lose, the sentence stands for both of you. He paused. You have 1 hour to prepare. We camp here. At sunset, we fight. It wasn't mercy, wasn't even kindness. But it was a chance. More than Kara had expected, more than clan law required. She looked at her father, tried to see past the war chief, to the orc who'd taught her to track deer, who'd carried her on his shoulders when she was small, who'd told her bedtime stories about ancestor heroes. Tried to find anything in those copper eyes that suggested he wanted her to win. Found nothing, just cold assessment. If she and Declan won, fine. Clan law satisfied. If they lost, and also fine. Justice served. Either outcome was acceptable as long as tradition was maintained. Agreed, Kara said. Then, because she had to know who fights for Iron Peak, Thorgrim turned to his warriors, pointed at two. Grumash, Vakra, you represent the clan. Grumash stepped forward first, massive even by orc standards, easily 7.5 feet tall, built like a mountain learned to walk. Scarred face suggesting he'd survived things that should have killed him. Dual axes each one, heavy enough that a human would need both hands to lift one. He looked at Kara with something that might have been pity, might have been contempt. Hard to tell. Vakra came next, smaller, faster, female. Kara knew her, had trained with her. They'd sparred together as teenagers, pushed each other, competed for instructor attention. Vakra had always been quicker, more technical. Where Grommash was overwhelming force, Vakra was precision, spear and shield, economy of motion. She met Kara's eyes, and there was definitely pity there. The look you give someone who's already lost but hasn't accepted it yet. 1 hour, Thorgrim repeated. Then he and his warriors withdrew to the tree line, set up camp, started a fire, settled in to wait like they had all the time in the world. Like this was routine, just another day enforcing clan law in enemy territory. Declan pulled Kara back into the cabin, closed the door. Can you fight, he asked. Direct. No sugarcoating. Honestly, you're stronger than 3 days ago, but you're not recovered. Not even close. Can you actually do this? Kara looked at her hands. They were steadier now. Meat back on her bones, muscle memory returning. But Declan was right. She was maybe 60% of where she'd been before the exile. Maybe less. Against Grommash and Vakra, both at full strength, both trained killers, both fighting for clan honor while she fought for survival, 60% might not be enough. I can fight, she said. Don't know if I can win, but I can fight. Then we need a plan, because I'm a decent shot with a bow and I can handle myself with a knife. But I'm not a warrior. I'm a woodsman who knows which end of the blade does the cutting. If this comes down to straight combat, we lose. So we need to be smarter. They spent the hour planning. Kara explained orc fighting doctrine, overwhelming force, aggressive offense. Warriors trained to press advantage, to never give ground, to break opponents through sheer relentless violence. Grommash will try to rush us, separate us. He'll go for you because you're the weaker target. Vakra will hang back, wait for opening strike when we're committed. So we don't separate, Declan said. We stay together, cover each other. I keep Vakra occupied with arrows, you handle Grommash. I can't handle Grommash alone. Not at full strength, definitely not at 60%. Then we make it not about strength. What's his weakness, Kara thought. Grommash was legendary for a reason. Strong, durable, experienced. But he's overconfident, believes in overwhelming force. If something doesn't break immediately, he gets frustrated, pushes harder, gets sloppy. So we let him push, let him think he's winning. Then we counter when he overextends. That requires surviving his initial rush, which is easier said than done when he's swinging axes that can cut through trees. Declan went to his weapon rack, pulled down his bow, checked the string, tested the pull, then grabbed his hunting knife. 8 inches of sharp steel. Well maintained, deadly at close range, but useless beyond arm's length. I've got maybe 8 arrows. After that, I'm down to the knife and whatever I can improvise. I need a weapon, Kara said. Sword, axe, something. Don't have spare weapons, just tools. There's a felling axe, but it's not balanced for combat. It'll have to do. An unbalanced axe is better than bare hands. Declan retrieved the felling axe from outside, handed it to Kara. She tested the weight. Too heavy in the head, handle too long for quick work. But it would cut, would block, would serve. This'll work. They stood there in the cabin that had become an unlikely sanctuary, human and orc, preparing to fight for the right to keep breathing. The absurdity wasn't lost on either of them. 3 days ago, Kara had been dying. Now she was about to fight trained warriors. Declan had been content in his solitude. Now he was risking his life for someone he'd known less than a week. "You don't have to do this," Kara said. "My father offered you an out. You can still walk away." "We've been over this. I'm not walking away." "You could die." "Everybody dies. At least I'll die for something other than solitude and stubbornness." Declan checked his arrows one more time. "Besides, I made you a promise when I cut that rope off your neck. Didn't say it out loud, but I made it. I said I'm going to prove that mercy matters, that choosing to see someone's humanity instead of their enemy status means something. And promises mean nothing if you abandon them when they get hard." Kara felt something shift in her chest, something she hadn't felt since before the exile. Not hope. Hope was still too dangerous, but possibility. The faint outline of maybe things could be different. Maybe the world didn't have to be orcs versus humans forever. Maybe individuals choosing mercy could build bridges that entire armies couldn't burn. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for saving me, for standing with me, for this." She gestured at the weapons, the planning, the hour they'd spent preparing for a fight they'd probably lose. "Don't thank me yet. Thank me if we survive." Outside, the sun was starting its descent. Afternoon bleeding into evening, shadows lengthening. The forest preparing for night with the same ruthless efficiency it prepared for winter. Soon it would be time. They stepped outside together. The war party had formed a rough circle in the clearing. Thorgrim stood at the far end, arms crossed, warhammer resting against his shoulder. Grommash and Vakra stood in the center, weapons ready, looking like statues carved from violence and confidence. "The terms," Thorgrim announced. His voice carried easily. Formal, ritual. This was ceremony now. Trial by combat, Kara Stoneheart and Declan Cole against Grommash Skullcrusher and Vakra Swift Spear. Fight continues until yield or death. No interference from observers. Victory proves worth. Defeat proves judgment was correct. He paused. "Combatants, do you accept these terms?" "Accepted," Kara said. "Accepted," Declan echoed. "Then begin." Grommash moved first, exactly as Kara predicted. Immediate rush. Dual axes swinging in wide arcs designed to create space to scatter opponents, to instill fear through overwhelming aggression. He came straight at Declan, correctly identifying the human as the weaker link. But Declan didn't scatter. Didn't retreat. He sidestepped, left drew, and released in one smooth motion. The arrow caught Grommash in the shoulder. Not deep. The orc's natural toughness in the angle meant it penetrated maybe 2 inches. Enough to draw blood. Enough to announce that the human could hurt him. Not enough to slow him down. Grommash roared. Frustration and rage swung harder. Declan rolled right, came up, released another arrow. This one hit Grommash's thigh. Shallow again, but accumulating damage. The giant orc adjusted, charged faster, axes coming down in an overhead strike that would have split Declan in half. Kara intercepted, felling axe meeting dual axes with a crash that echoed through the clearing. The impact vibrated up her arms, felt like hitting a mountain. Her shoulders screamed. Muscles not fully recovered, protesting the strain. But she held, redirected Grommash's momentum to the side. Let physics do the work her weakened body couldn't. Grommash stumbled. Not much, just enough to create space. Kara didn't press, didn't try to capitalize, just repositioned, put herself between Grommash and Declan. "Together," she called. "Stay together." Vakra entered from the right, silent, professional. Spear thrust aimed at Kara's exposed side. Kara twisted, brought the axe around in a block. Spear met axe handle. Vakra immediately withdrew, reset thrust again. Testing, probing, looking for weaknesses. Declan fired. Arrow meant for Vakra. She deflected it with her shield. Didn't even look. Pure muscle memory. Fired again. Same result. Vakra was too good, too experienced. Arrows wouldn't work on her like they had on Grommash. 3 left, Declan said, meaning arrows, meaning after 3 more shots he was down to knife range where he'd be useless. Grommash had recovered, came in again, this time more cautious, testing Kara's defense. Quick strikes, feints, looking for the overextension. The mistake, Kara gave ground, let him advance, focused on defense, on surviving, on not dying in the first exchange. The 4 of them circled, human and orc versus 2 orcs. Grommash and Vakra worked together like they'd trained together for years, which they had. Coordinated strikes, one pressing while the other waited. When Kara committed to blocking Grommash, Vakra struck. When Declan aimed at Vakra, Grommash charged. Kara felt her arms getting heavy, muscles screaming. 3 days of recovery wasn't enough, wasn't close to enough. Every block sent shocks through damaged shoulders. Every deflection cost energy she didn't have to spare. Sweat ran into her eyes. Breathing got harder. The axe felt heavier with each swing. Declan was bleeding. Small cut on his left arm where Vakra's spear had gotten through. Another on his ribs, shallow. Not life-threatening yet, but accumulating. Death by 1,000 cuts if they didn't change something. Grommash sensed weakness, pressed harder. Kara blocked high. He went low. Axe blade cut across her thigh. Not deep, but pain exploded white and hot. Her leg buckled. She went down on one knee. Grommash raised both axes. Victory over head strike. The kind that ended fights. Kara couldn't block from this angle. Couldn't get the felling axe up in time. This was it. This was how it ended. Trial by combat. Clan justice served. Her father proved right. Then Declan was there. Stepped between Kara and Grommash. Knife in hand. The hunting knife that was useless against armored orcs in extended combat. But Grommash's axes were committed to the overhead arc. Guard open. Declan drove the knife up under the ribs, found the gap in the leather armor, found flesh, found something vital. Grommash's eyes went wide, shocked, offended. A human with a knife had just done what armies of orcs had failed to do, had found his weakness and exploited it. The axes fell from his hands. He staggered back, looked down at the knife buried in his side, looked at Declan. "You," he managed, then collapsed. Not dead, but out of the fight, bleeding, defeated. Vakra screamed, rage and disbelief. Her partner was down. The unstoppable Grommash skull crusher taken out by a human woodsman with a knife. She abandoned tactics, abandoned strategy, charged Kara with pure fury. Spear thrust, fast, angry. Kara rolled left, barely. Her wounded leg protested. Vakra reversed, slashed with the spear shaft, caught Kara across the face, split her cheek. Blood ran green down green skin. Kara swung the axe wild, desperate. Vakra danced back. Too quick, too skilled. Even angry, she was better than Kara was right now. Another thrust, Kara blocked. The axe handle cracked. Old wood stressed beyond its limits. One more hit and it would break. One more exchange and Kara would be unarmed. Declan circled, looking for an opening. But Vakra kept her shield toward him, kept him in peripheral vision, wouldn't give him the same opportunity he'd had with the Grommash. She thrust at Kara again. Kara blocked. The axe handle shattered. Pieces fell to the ground. Kara was on her knees, unarmed, wounded, exhausted. Vakra raised the spear. Victory thrust, aimed at Kara's heart. "You shame us all," Vakra hissed, then drove down. Kara caught the spear shaft. Bare hands on wood, strength born from desperation. Held it, inches from her chest. Vakra pushed. Kara's arms shook, muscles failing. The spear tint got closer. Touched cloth, started to penetrate. Then Declan's last arrow hit Vakra in the back of the knee. Not the kill shot he'd aimed for, but enough. Vakra's leg buckled. The pressure on the spear released. Kara twisted, redirected, used Vakra's own momentum. The orc warrior stumbled forward. Kara grabbed, pulled, threw Vakra over her shoulder. Basic wrestling move, the kind taught to children. Vakra hit the ground hard. Stunned, Kara was on her immediately. Grabbed the spear Vakra had dropped. Pressed the point to Vakra's throat. "Yield," Kara gasped, barely able to speak, barely able to breathe. Yield or D. Vakra looked up at her, at the warrior she trained with, at the marked coward who'd somehow just beaten her. Oh, yield, she whispered. Bitter, defeated, shamed. Kara stepped back, dropped the spear. Her legs gave out. She collapsed, sat there in the dirt, bleeding, exhausted, alive. Declan limped over, sat down beside her. Neither spoke, just breathed. Let their bodies process the fact that they'd survived, that they'd won, that trial by combat had proven what Thorgrim wanted, proven just not the way he'd expected. The war chief stepped into the circle, looked at Gramash, who was being tended by two other warriors, looked at Vakra, who was sitting up, holding her wounded knee, looked at Kara and Declan. Bloody, battered, victorious. Clan law is satisfied, Thorgrim said. No emotion, just statement of fact. You fought, you won, you're free. He turned to Kara, copper eyes meeting amber one last time. You're clanless now. No honor among orcs, no name in Iron Peak, no family, no home. I know, Kara said. Do you understand what that means? You'll never be welcome among our people. Any orc who helps you will be marked. Any clan that shelters you will face Iron Peak's judgment. You're alone. I'm not alone. Kara glanced at Declan. I have a friend who saw me dying and chose mercy. That's more than Iron Peak ever gave me. Thorgrim stood there for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He reached into his belt pouch, pulled out something small, tossed it to Kara. She caught it reflexively, looked down. A carving, orc craftsmanship, a small stone bear. The same bear her father had carved for her when she'd turned 6, when she'd first started warrior training, when he'd told her she'd grow strong like the bear, fierce like the bear, honorable like the bear. Keep it, Thorgrim said quietly, or throw it away. Your choice now. Then louder to his warriors, we're done here, pack up. We return to Iron Peak. The war party moved efficiently. Gramash was helped to his feet. Vakra limped but walked on her own. Within minutes they were gone, melted back into the forest, horns silent, leaving behind only trampled grass and blood in the dirt. Kara and Declan sat there until full dark, too exhausted to move, too relieved to care. Finally, Declan said, we should get inside, tend these wounds before infection sets in. Can't move yet. Legs don't work. Yeah, same. They sat in companionable silence. Then Kara started laughing, quiet at first, then louder, until she was shaking with it. Declan looked at her like she'd lost her mind. What's funny when we won, we actually won. Trial by combat against 2 Iron Peak champions. You with a bow and knife, me with a broken axe and 60% functionality. We won. Declan considered this. Then he started laughing too, because it was absurd, because they should be dead, because Mercy had survived one more day against a world that kept insisting it didn't matter. They helped each other inside eventually. Cleaned wounds, bandaged cuts. Declan's ribs were bruised, possibly cracked. Kara's thigh needed stitches she did herself with needle and thread, biting down on leather to keep from screaming. They worked in silence, bodies too tired for talking, minds too overwhelmed for processing. When they were done, they sat at the table, shared water from the bucket, stared at the fireplace. Eventually, Declan said, what now? What do you mean? You're free? Trial's done? You can go anywhere. Do anything. What do you want to do? Kara thought about it. About the vast forest outside, about the world beyond, about the fact that she had no clan, no home, no plan beyond surviving the next hour. I don't know, she admitted. I can't go back to Iron Peak. Can't go to any orc settlement. I'm marked. Clanless. Any orc who helps me gets the same treatment I got. So you stay in human territory. Humans won't exactly welcome an orc with open arms. We've been killing each other for generations. Most humans see green skin and reach for weapons. Not all humans, Declan said. No, not all. Kara looked at him, at this man who'd upended his quiet isolation to save her, who'd fought beside all her, who'd proven that individuals could choose differently than their cultures demanded. There's a village 5 miles east. You mentioned it, Elder Constance. Pine Haven, small, maybe 60 people. Constance runs it, She's difficult but fair. Would they accept an orc? Declan was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, he said honestly. Constance might. She's seen enough of the world to know things aren't simple. But the village, the people, they're frontier folk. Conservative, traditional. They might see you as a threat. But you'll vouch for me. I'll vouch for you. Don't know if that helps. I'm not exactly popular in Pine Haven. I'm the hermit who lives in the woods and shows up once a year to trade furs. They tolerate me. Don't know if my word carries weight. It's worth trying, Kara said, because the alternative is living alone in the forest. And I've spent 45 days alone. I don't want to spend the rest of my life that way. They rested for 2 days, let their bodies heal enough for travel. Kara's thigh closed up. Declan's ribs stopped screaming every time he breathed. They packed supplies. Kara wore a cloak Declan found hood up to hide her face. Not a perfect disguise, but it might buy them a few seconds before people started reaching for weapons. The walk to Pine Haven took most of a day. 5 miles through forest that Declan knew intimately. He pointed out landmarks, showed Kara how to navigate by the way moss grew on trees, by the sound of the stream that ran parallel to their path, by the patterns of animal tracks that indicated safe routes versus dangerous ones. Kara reciprocated, taught him orc tracking techniques, how to read disturbed earth, how to spot signs of predators versus prey, how to move through underbrush without leaving obvious trails. An exchange of knowledge, building bridges through practical skills. They talked more than they had in the cabin, about childhood, about what they'd wanted to be before life decided for them. And Declan had wanted to be a carpenter, build things instead of just chopping them down. Kara had wanted to be a healer, learn herbs and medicine, help people instead of hurting them. Why didn't you, Kara asked, became a husband instead, then a father, then a widower who ran away to the woods because being around people hurt too much. And now I'm a woodsman who apparently rescues dying orcs and fights in trials by combat. Life's funny that way. They reached Pine Haven just before sunset. The village was exactly what Declan had described. Small, rough, practical. Log buildings arranged around a central square. Smoke rising from chimneys. The smell of cooking food. Sounds of people finishing daily work. Normal life. The kind Kara hadn't experienced in months. Declan led her to the largest building. 2 stories. Windows that actually had glass. A sign that read Constance's Hall in carved letters. He knocked. Waited. The door opened. An older woman stood there. Late 60s, maybe 70. Short gray hair, eyes that had seen everything twice and weren't impressed either time. She wore practical clothing. Leather apron over homespun dress. Hands that had worked hard for decades and weren't stopping now. Declan, she said, surprised. Wasn't expecting you until spring. Something came up. Need to talk to you. Privately. Constance's eyes flicked to Kara, to the cloaked figure standing behind Declan. Decades of frontier living had taught her to assess threats quickly. Who's your friend? That's the something that came up. Constance studied them both, then stepped aside. Come in, but if this is trouble, Declan, so help me, I'll throw you both out myself. They entered. The hall was warm, fire in a large hearth, tables and chairs, shelves with supplies, maps on the walls. This was clearly the administrative center of Pine Haven, where decisions got made, where Constance ran things with an iron hand wrapped in practical wisdom. Show me, Constance said. Direct. No patience for dancing around issues. Kara pulled back her hood. Let the firelight catch green skin, amber eyes, the unmistakable features of an orc in a human village. Constance's hand went to the knife at her belt. Instinct, then stopped. Because Declan wasn't acting threatened, because if this orc had wanted violence, she wouldn't have walked in peacefully. Explain, Constance said, quickly. Declan explained, the finding, the rescue, the recovery, the trial by combat. Every relevant detail in 5 minutes of efficient narrative. Constance listened without interrupting, face showing nothing. When he finished, she turned to Kara. And you, why come here? Why not go to your own people? I can't, Kara said. I'm marked, clanless. Any orc who helps me faces the same punishment I did. I have nowhere else to go. So you come to a human village, expect us to welcome you with open arms. No, I expect you to be afraid, to reach for weapons, to see enemy before person. But I'm hoping maybe you'll see what Declan saw. Someone who needs help. Someone who chose conscience over duty file and paid for it. Constance walked around Kara, studying, assessing. You're wounded, recent. From the trial, Sam. Yes. You fought, won. Barely. But you won. Constance turned to Declan. You fought with her, against your own safety, your own interests. Why, Pembo? Because mercy matters, because someone had to prove that humans and orcs don't have to be enemies forever. Because she deserved a chance. Constance sat down, gestured for them to do the same. I believe you both. Believe the story. Believe your intentions are good. She paused. But my belief doesn't matter. What matters is the village. 60 people who've lost family to orc raids, who've fought and bled, who see orcs as monsters, and you want me to ask them to accept one living among us. Yes, Kara said. They'll say no. Then we leave, find somewhere else. But we had to try on. Constance stood, walked to the window, looked out at Pine Haven settling in for evening. I'll call a town meeting. Tomorrow. Let people see you, hear your story. Then they'll vote. Majority decides, she turned back. But I'm warning you now, the vote will be no. Fear is stronger than compassion. Always has been. I understand, Kara said. You can stay here tonight, in the back room. Don't go outside. Don't let anyone see you until the meeting. If people panic before we can have a proper discussion, this ends badly. They spent the night in Constance's hall. Small room, 2 beds. Kara couldn't sleep. Kept running through scenarios. What she'd say, how she'd present herself. How to convince people who had every reason to hate her that she was worth the risk. Declan couldn't sleep either, sat by the window, carved another wooden rabbit, the rhythm soothing, familiar. You don't have to be nervous, he said. Just tell the truth. Tell them what you told me. The truth is, I'm an orc warrior who participated in raids, who killed humans, who only stopped when I couldn't lie to myself anymore about what we were doing. That's not exactly a compelling case for acceptance. The truth is you chose conscience over clan, that you paid for that choice with 45 days of starvation and a death sentence, that you've earned a second chance. People don't give second chances to their enemies. Some people do. Constance might, a few others might. That's all we need, just enough to tip the vote. Morning came. Constance assembled the village in the square. 60 people, young and old, hard faces shaped by frontier life. They gathered because Constance had called them, and Constance's word was law in Pine Haven. But they gathered with suspicion. Something was wrong. Something was different. Constance stood on the steps of her hall. I've called you here because Declan Cole has brought someone who needs our help. Someone who's asking for asylum, for a chance to live among us. I want you to hear their story before you decide. To see them as people before you see them as threat. She gestured. Declan stepped forward. Then Kara. Hood down, face visible, green skin in afternoon light. Unmistakable. The reaction was immediate. Hands to weapons. Shouts, anger, fear. An orc, someone yelled. Constance, have you lost your mind? Get it out of here. Kill it before it kills us. Constance raised her hand. Silence. Her voice cut through the chaos, hard, authoritative. You'll listen, then you'll vote, but you'll listen first. Declan, speak. Declan told the story, again, every detail. Finding Kara, saving her, the trial by combat, the victory, everything that had happened in the past week. The crowd listened, some with open hostility, some with curiosity, most with the careful neutrality of people reserving judgment. When Declan finished, Constance said, Kara Stoneheart will speak now, hear her, then decide. Kara stepped forward, faced 60 humans who saw her as monster, as enemy, as everything they'd been taught to hate. I won't lie to you, she said. Her voice carried across the square. Strong, clear. I was a warrior, I participated in raids on human settlements. I killed your people, not here but others like you, families like yours. I did these things because I was taught they were honorable. That strength through conquest made us worthy, that your lives mattered less than our glory. She paused, let them absorb that. Then I saw a child, 7 years old, blonde hair, screaming for her mother in a burning house. And I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't kill her. Couldn't keep lying to myself that this was honor. So I froze. 3 of my brothers-in-arms died because of my hesitation. My clan sentenced me to death by starvation in your territory, left me to die as punishment for growing a conscience. She met their eyes, one by one, challenging them to see past skin color. Declan Cole found me dying. He had every reason to let me die. His family was killed by orcs, but he chose mercy. He saved me, fought for me, proved that individuals can choose differently than their cultures demand. She took a breath. I'm asking for the same choice. The chance to prove I'm more than what I was trained to be. The chance to be useful, to contribute, to earn my place through work and service rather than violence and conquest. Silence. Heavy. Tense. Then a man stepped forward. Older. Scarred. My son died in an orc raid 5 years ago. He was 16. You expect me to live alongside one of the monsters who might have killed him? No, Kara said. I expect you to hate me, to see your son every time you look at me. But I'm hoping you might also see that killing me won't bring him back. That mercy might mean more than revenge. Another voice, woman this time. How do we know you won't kill us in our sleep? How do we know this isn't a trick? You don't, Kara admitted. You have to trust, same as Declan trusted, same as I'm trusting now by standing here unarmed in front of people who want me dead. The debate went on, some for, most against, fear versus compassion, tradition versus change. After an hour, Constance called for the vote. All in favor of granting Kara Stoneheart asylum in Pine Haven, show of hands. 15 hands. Constance. Declan. 13 others. Not enough. All opposed. 45 hands. Overwhelming majority. Constance's face showed nothing. The village has spoken. Kara Stoneheart, you're denied asylum in Pine Haven. You must leave our territory by sunrise tomorrow. Kara nodded, had expected this. Hoped otherwise, but expected this. I understand. Thank you for listening. She and Declan gathered their things. Constance pulled them aside. I'm sorry, I voted for you, but I can't override the majority, not on this. You did what you could, Kara said. There's unclaimed land 2 miles east. Build there, close enough that we can trade, far enough that the village feels safe. Come back in spring. Maybe attitudes change. It was something, not acceptance, but not complete rejection either. They took it. 2 miles east, they found a clearing, stream nearby, good trees for lumber, defensible position. They built a shelter, rough, simple, but it would hold against Montana winter. They'd survive, together. That night, sitting by their fire, Declan said, I'm sorry they rejected you. Don't be, they're afraid. Fear makes sense. We've been killing each other for generations. Can't expect that to change overnight. Still, you deserve better. Maybe, but deserving and getting are different things. Kara poked the fire, watched sparks rise. At least I'm not alone. At least I have someone who sees me as more than an enemy. You do, Declan said. And for the first time in 15 years, he felt like maybe isolation wasn't the same as safety. Maybe connection was worth the risk of pain. Maybe mercy could build something stronger than walls. They fell asleep to the sound of the stream and the crackling fire. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, light flurries that promised heavier storms to come. Two exiles learning that surviving wasn't the same as living, but living required being willing to try, even when the world said no. December deepened the cold. What had started as light snow in late November became relentless blizzards that buried the world in white. The forest transformed from autumn's final colors into winter's absolute silence. Snow fell in sheets thick enough to erase landmarks, turn familiar paths into deadly mazes. Make survival the only work that mattered. Kara and Declan survived, more than survived. They built. The shelter became a proper cabin. Rough-hewn logs chinked against wind, roof that didn't leak, door that closed, fireplace that drew smoke up and out instead of choking them. It wasn't Declan's old place wasn't built with 15 years of refinement, but it held. It worked. It was theirs. They developed rhythms, routines. Declan hunted in the early mornings when deer came down from the high country seeking easier browse. Kara processed the kills, skinning, butchering, preserving meat in the smokehouse they'd built together. Her hands remembered the work even though the context was different. Warrior skills translated surprisingly well to survival skills. Precision with a blade was precision regardless of whether you were fighting or field dressing an elk. Afternoons they worked on winter preparations. Firewood, always more firewood. Declan chopped, Kara split and stacked. The physical labor kept them warm, kept their minds occupied, kept the questions about what happens next at bay, at least temporarily. Evenings were for maintenance, sharpening tools, mending clothes, the small tasks that kept frontier life from degrading into chaos. Declan carved his wooden rabbits by firelight, muscle memory and meditation combined. Kara watched sometimes, asked questions about technique. He taught her the basics, how to read the grain, how to let the wood tell you what it wanted to be rather than forcing your vision onto it. She carved her first piece in mid-December. A bear, clumsy, rough, but recognizable. She kept it on the shelf beside the stone bear her father had given her during the trial. Old symbol and new symbol, what she'd been and what she was becoming. They talked, more than Declan had talked to anyone in 15 years, about everything and nothing. For philosophy and practicality, the nature of honor, the difference between strength and violence, whether people could change or if they just became better at hiding what they'd always been. I think people can change, Kara said one night. They were sharing evening meal, venison stew with wild onions, simple but filling. But change requires breaking. You have to shatter what you were before you can rebuild into something new. That's bleak, Declan said. That's realistic. I didn't change because I wanted to. I changed because Iron Peak shattered me. 45 days of starvation. Death sentence. Complete rejection by everything I'd known. That's what it took for me to see differently. And you think that's the only way people can't choose to change before life forces them? Can they? You lived alone for 15 years. Chose isolation. Chose to never connect with another person. What would have made you change if you hadn't found me dying? If life hadn't forced the choice? Declan didn't have an answer for that, because she was right. He'd been content in his isolation, had convinced himself that existing without pain was better than living with risk. Finding Kara hadn't been a choice. It had been life presenting an impossible situation and forcing him to decide who he wanted to be. Maybe you're right, he admitted. Maybe change requires breaking, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we needed to break, you and me both. And now we rebuild, see what we become. They had visitors, sort of. Gareth the blacksmith from Pinehaven showed up on a Tuesday in mid-December, said he was passing through, which was an obvious lie since no one passed through 2 miles into the woods in December without specific purpose. He brought iron nails, salt, news. Villages talking about you two, he said. Gruff, uncomfortable. Some good, some bad. Constance speaks highly, says you might be useful come spring. And the others, Kara asked. Fear mostly, but fear's fading a bit. No raids, no attacks. You're just living quiet. That matters. Shows you're not a threat. He left the supplies, refused payment, said, consider it investment. You two make it through winter, maybe you prove something worth proving. Then he was gone. Martha the widow came next, 2 weeks later, brought preserves, jam she'd made from summer berries. Don't get excited, she said. I'm not vouching for you. Just don't like waste. Made too much, figure you can use it. But she stayed for tea, asked Kara about orc culture, about crafts and cooking, shared human recipes. The exchange was cautious, formal, but it was exchange, communication. The first threads of something that might eventually become understanding. Others came, not many, but some. Curiosity overcoming fear. Practical concerns overcoming prejudice. Declan and Kara had meat, lots of meat, more than two people could eat. The village had grain, vegetables, things that didn't grow in the forest in winter. Trade made sense. Trade was safer than ideology. By late December, they had established a routine. Every week, Declan or Kara would bring surplus meat to Pine Haven, leave it with Constance. In exchange, they'd receive flour, salt, other necessities. No direct interaction with most villagers, but presence, consistency, the slow accumulation of reliability. It's working, Declan said one evening. Slowly, but it's working. They're starting to see you as a person instead of a threat. Some of them, Kara corrected. Some still cross the street when they see me. Some still reach for weapons. But yes, some are changing. That's more than I expected. More than either of us expected. The blizzard hit on December 28th, storm that came from the north with wind that sounded like wolves howling in harmony. Visibility dropped to nothing. Temperature plummeted. The kind of storm that killed people who weren't prepared. Kara and Declan were prepared. Cabins sealed tight, firewood stacked, food preserved. They settled in to wait it out. But on the second day, during a brief lull in the wind, they heard something. Faint, distant, a child crying. They looked at each other. Same thought. Impossible. No one would be out in this. No child would be wandering in a blizzard 2 miles from the village. They were hearing things, wind playing tricks. But the crying continued. Closer now. Definitely real. Definitely a child. Declan grabbed his coat. Kara grabbed hers. They stepped into white hell. Snow drove horizontal. Wind cut like knives. Following the sound was guesswork and luck. But they followed. 50 yards from the cabin, they found her. Small shape, nearly buried in a drift. Blonde hair plastered with ice. Blue lips, shaking so hard it looked like seizure. Maybe 8 years old, wearing a coat too thin for this weather. Lost, dying. Kara reaches her first, scooped her up, light, too light, already hypothermic. "I've got you," Kara said, words the child probably couldn't hear over the wind. "You're safe now." They fought their way back. The cabin was a beacon, firelight through the window, warmth and safety and life. Inside, they stripped the child's wet clothes, wrapped her in every blanket they had, set her by the fire. Not too close. Gradual warming. Too fast would cause shock. The girl was conscious, but barely, eyes unfocused, shivering that wouldn't stop. Kara held her, shared body heat, rubbed circulation back into frozen fingers. Declan made warm broth. Not hot, warm. They got small amounts into her, sip by careful sip. It took hours, slow hours where they weren't sure if the child would make it, if they'd found her in time, if the cold had already done damage too severe to reverse. But gradually the shivering lessened. The blue faded from her lips. Her eyes focused. "What's your name?" Kara asked softly, her voice gentle in a way Declan had never heard. Maternal. Protective. "Rosalind," the girl whispered, "but everyone calls me Rosa." "Rosa. Beautiful name. I'm Kara. This is Declan. You're safe now. Can you tell us what happened?" The story came out in fragments. Rosa had been playing near the village edge, saw a rabbit, followed it, got turned around in the storm, couldn't find her way back, had wandered for what felt like hours but was probably 30 minutes. Long enough to get dangerously lost. Long enough to start dying. "My mama," Rosa said, fear cutting through the fog. "She'll be worried. She'll think I'm dead." "We'll get you home," Declan promised, "soon as the storm breaks. But right now, you're staying here, staying warm, staying safe." Rosa looked at Kara, really looked, saw green skin, amber eyes, features that didn't match human. "You're an orc," she said, not accusatory, just observation. "I am. Are you going to eat me? Papa says orcs eat children," Kara smiled, sad and gentle. "No, sweetling, I'm not going to eat you. I'm going to keep you warm and fed and safe until we can get you back to your mother. That's all." Rosa studied her, child logic processing. "Then you're nice for an orc." "Thank you, you're nice too, for a human." Rosa smiled, small but real. Then she was asleep. exhaustion and warmth overwhelming the adrenaline that had kept her moving. Kara held her, didn't move, just sat there by the fire with a human child in her arms and let something long dormant wake up inside her chest. Declan watched, saw the transformation. Warrior becoming protector, soldier becoming mother. Kara had mentioned wanting to be a healer once, before clan doctrine had demanded she be a killer instead. Now holding Rosa, she looked like what she could have been, what she might still become. The storm broke on the third day. They bundled Rosa in warm clothes, gave her food for the journey. Then Kara carried her back to Pine Haven, Declan beside them, together. The walk took an hour through snow that came up to Kara's knees. The village was in chaos. Search parties organizing. Parents frantic. The assumption was Rosa had died, that the storm had taken her, that they'd find her body in the spring thaw. Kara walked into the square, Rosa in her arms, alive, healthy, scared but safe. Rosa's mother saw them first, screamed, not fear, recognition, joy mixed with disbelief. She ran, grabbed Rosa, held her like she'd never let go, sobbing, thanking God and luck and any power that had kept her daughter alive. "The orc saved me," Rosa said, loud enough for everyone to hear, clear enough that there was no mistaking. "I was lost in the storm. She found me, kept me warm, kept me safe. She's nice." The crowd stared, at Kara, at Rosa, at the impossible image of an orc warrior holding a human child with tenderness instead of violence. At everything they'd been taught flipped on its head. Rosa's mother looked at Kara, terror and gratitude warring on her face. "Thank you," she managed, barely a whisper. "Thank you for bringing her back." Kara nodded. "She's a brave girl, strong. Take care of her." They left before the crowd could fully process, before fear could overcome gratitude, before someone decided that orc in the village square was still orc regardless of good deeds. Back to their cabin, back to safety, but something had shifted, something fundamental. 2 days later, Constance showed up. "The village wants to talk," she said. "No promises, but Rosa's parents are pushing hard, saying you deserve another chance, saying anyone who saves a child in a blizzard deserves recognition." "And the others?" Declan asked. "Mixed, some softening, some harder than ever. But there's debate now, conversation. That's progress." The meeting happened that evening. Same square, same 60 people, but different energy. Less hostility, more uncertainty. People wrestling with cognitive dissonance. Orcs were monsters, but this orc had saved Rosa. Both things couldn't be true. So which belief got adjusted? Rosa's father spoke. "I've hated orcs my entire life. Lost my brother to a raid when I was 12. Swore I'd kill any orc I saw. Would have killed her if I'd seen her before she saved Rosa." He paused, struggling. "But she saved my daughter. Found her dying in the snow. Kept her alive. Brought her back. And I can't reconcile that with monster. Can't make it fit." Others spoke, some agreeing, some still opposed. The debate went on for an hour, longer. Finally, Constance called for another vote. All in favor of granting Kara Stoneheart asylum in Pine Haven. 32 hands, majority. All opposed, 28 hands, minority. "The village has spoken. Kara Stoneheart, you're granted provisional asylum in Pine Haven, subject to review, subject to behavior. But you are welcome here." So Kara stood there, stunned, hadn't expected this, hadn't let herself hope. "Thank you," she managed, voice thick. "I won't make you regret this." They gave her a house, small, on the edge of the village, symbolic placement, included but separate. She could be part of the community without being in the center of it, could prove herself without forcing constant proximity. Declan helped her move in. Not much to move. They'd been living rough. But it was hers. First place that was hers since Iron Peak had exiled her. First home that she'd chosen rather than been assigned. "What now?" Declan asked. Same question as always. The question that defined their existence. "Now I prove I'm worth the chance they gave me. I work. I contribute. I make myself useful." And she did. Kara offered her skills, tracking, hunting, defense instruction. The village needed hunters with winter-depleting game near Pine Haven. Kara knew the forest, knew animal behavior, knew how to find food when food was scarce. She taught willing students, Gareth first, then others, techniques that combined orc tracking with human precision. She also taught defense, not offense, not conquest, defense. How to protect the village, how to spot threats, how to organize militia against raiders, whether they were orc or human or something else entirely. Some people refused, couldn't separate her from what she'd been. But some learned, listened, recognized that warrior knowledge could serve protection instead of violence. Rosa visited almost daily, attached herself to Kara like a shadow, asked endless questions about orc culture, about fighting, about everything. Kara answered patiently, told her about Iron Peak, about training from childhood, about the moment she'd realized conquest wasn't honor. Rosa listened with the intensity of someone learning the world was more complicated than she'd been taught. "Why did you save me?" Rosa asked one afternoon. They were in Kara's house. Rosa was supposed to be learning to carve, but was mostly asking questions instead. "Because you needed saving, because leaving a child to die in the snow isn't something I could live with. But I'm human, you're orc. We're supposed to be enemies. We're supposed to be a lot of things. Doesn't mean we have to be them." Kara guided Rosa's hands on the carving knife. "Oh, I am careful. Let the wood guide you. Don't force it. My papa says you're different. Says most orcs wouldn't have saved me." "Your papa's probably right. Most orcs are taught that humans are the enemy. Same as most humans are taught orcs are monsters. But most isn't all. And individuals can choose differently." "Is that why you got kicked out, because you chose differently?" "That's exactly why." Rosa was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, "I'm glad you chose differently. I'm glad you saved me. I'm glad you're here." Kara felt something crack in her chest, warmth spreading. "I'm glad too, sweetling. I'm glad too." January brought deeper cold, the coldest part of Montana winter, when survival was work and life was maintenance and the world contracted to the space you could keep warm. Kara had fallen into the rhythm of Pine Haven. Morning hunts, afternoon instruction, evening meals sometimes shared with villagers who'd overcome their fear enough to extend invitations. Declan had moved into the village permanently. His old cabin stood empty now, a monument to 15 years of isolation he no longer needed. He'd taken a house near Kara's close enough to share meals, far enough to maintain the independence they both valued. He taught woodworking to village children, passed on skills he'd hoarded in solitude, found that teaching was healing in ways isolation had never been. They'd grown close, partnership that went deeper than convenience, trust that came from surviving impossible things together, found family, chosen kinship. Not romance, neither was built for that, and what they had was more durable than passion. It was the kind of bond forged in fire and tempered through patience. "You're integrating well," he said one evening. They were sharing tea in Kara's house. Rosa had left an hour ago. The fire burned low and comfortable. "Better than expected. Some people still hate me, still see monster, but some see person. That's enough. More than enough. You've built something here. Proved something. We've proved something, you and me. That mercy matters. That individuals choosing differently can change things." "Speaking of change," Declan said carefully, "Constance mentioned something. Rumors, coming from orc territory." Kara's stomach tightened. "What kind of rumors?" "Civil war. Iron Peak is fragmenting. Reformers versus traditionalists. Fighting over whether the old ways still work or if it's time for something new." "Who's leading the reformers?" "Don't know. Rumors are vague. But Constance's sources say it's serious. That clans are taking sides, that it might spill into human territory depending on how it plays out." Kara stared into the fire, thought about her father, about Thorgrim, the unyielding, war chief, traditional to his bones. Would he be fighting reformers, leading traditionalists, or had seeing his daughter survive after exile changed him the way exile had changed her? "If it spills here," Kara said slowly, "if Iron Peak warriors come to Pine Haven, I'll fight. Not for conquest, for defense. This village gave me a chance. I'll protect it. I know you will. That's why I told you. So you'd be prepared." 2 weeks later, on a cold February morning, they came. Not an army, not a war party, just one orc. Alone, wounded. walking into Pine Haven at midday like he had every right to be there. 7 feet tall, copper eyes, gray threading through dark hair, scars telling stories of 100 battles. Thorgrim, the Unyielding, former war chief of Iron Peak. Now just another exile walking into a human village with nothing but the clothes on his back and wounds that suggested he'd lost his war. Kara was teaching Gareth advanced tracking when the cry went up. Orc in the village, armed orc. She ran, Gareth behind her, reached the square to find Thorgrim surrounded by 20 villagers with weapons drawn. He didn't have his warhammer, didn't have armor, just a simple sword and the bearing of someone who'd commanded armies, but now commanded nothing. His eyes found Kara, copper meeting amber, father and daughter, exile recognizing exile. Kara Stoneheart, he said, formal, public. I come seeking sanctuary, seeking the mercy you were shown. Will you grant it? The square went absolutely silent, everyone looking at Kara, waiting for her answer. This was the orc who'd sentenced her to death, who'd led the trial by combat, who represented everything she'd fled. And now he was asking her for help. Kara's mind raced, anger first, hot and immediate. This was her father, who'd called her a coward, who'd left her to starve, who'd chosen clan law over his daughter. He didn't deserve mercy, didn't deserve anything but the same abandonment he'd given her. But then she thought about Declan, about the mercy he'd shown when he'd had every reason to let her die, about the lessons she'd learned, that mercy without cost wasn't real mercy, that choosing compassion when it was hard was the only choice that mattered. What happened, she asked, voice level, giving nothing away. Civil war, as rumored. I led the reformers. We argued for change, for questioning tradition, for considering whether strength through conquest was still serving Iron Peak, or just perpetuating cycles of violence. His voice stayed steady despite obvious pain from his wounds. We lost. I was exiled. Same sentence I gave you. Death by exposure in enemy lands. Except I chose to walk to life instead of waiting for death. Wait, so why here? Why Pine Haven? Because my daughter survived her exile. Because she found mercy in enemy territory. Because if humans could show compassion to a marked orc warrior, perhaps they'd show it to a failed war chief who finally understood his daughter was right. Kara looked at him, at the orc who'd been larger than life her entire childhood. Who'd taught her to fight. Who'd told her clan honor was everything. Who'd broken her when she'd chosen conscience over doctrine. He looked smaller now, older, human in a way she'd never seen him before. You left me to die, she said quietly. I did. You called me a coward, stripped of my honor, sentenced me to starvation. I did all those things. And now you ask me for the mercy you denied me. I do, and I understand if you refuse. Understand if you tell these people to kill me. Understand if you want revenge for what I did. I've earned it. Kara stood there, feeling the weight of 60 pairs of eyes, feeling the weight of her own history, the 45 days of dying, the shame, the fear, the pain, all of it pressing down, demanding justice, demanding payback. Then she thought about Rosa, about the child she'd saved, about how Rosa's father had overcome hate to accept Kara, about how change required breaking, but also required choosing to rebuild into something better than what broke. You can stay, Kara said. You can live in Pine Haven, but you earn your place. You work, you contribute. You prove you are worth the mercy you're asking for. Same as I did. Same as anyone asking for second chances has to do. Thorgrim nodded slowly. Thank you, daughter. I don't deserve this, but I'll try to earn it. Don't thank me. Thank Declan Cole. Thank this village. Thank every person who showed me that enemies can become family if we choose to see each other as people first. The village debated. Another vote, closer than Kara's had been, but ultimately Mercy won, narrowly. Provisionally. Same conditions as Kara. Behavior subject to review. But he could stay. They gave him a house. Smaller than Kara's. Farther from the center. Constance made clear that trust was earned, not granted. That one wrong move and he was gone. Thorgrim accepted without argument. Moved in, started working. He was good with his hands. Carpenter skills from decades of maintaining weapons and armor translated to building furniture. repairing structures, useful skills in a frontier village where everything eventually broke and needed fixing. He worked quietly, didn't talk much, just showed up, did the work, proved reliability through repetition. Kara kept her distance initially, wasn't ready for reconciliation, wasn't ready to forgive, but she watched, saw him adapting, saw him learning humility, saw him becoming what she'd become, someone who'd lost everything and was rebuilding from nothing. They spoke for the first time a week after his arrival. Short conversation, practical. He needed to borrow tools. She had them. The exchange was stilted, formal, but it was exchange, communication, the first of the thread. You've built something here, Thorgrim said. Not quite approval, not quite pride, but acknowledgement. We've built something, Declan and me, the village and us. It's not perfect, but it works. I was wrong, he said abruptly, about you, about what courage means, about honor. I was wrong about all of it. I know. Can you forgive me? Kara looked at him, at her father, at the orc who'd shaped her entire life through both teaching and rejection. I don't know yet. Ask me again in a year, after you've proven you mean it, after you've earned forgiveness the same way I earned acceptance. Fair enough. March brought the first hints of thaw. Snow still covered the ground, but the killing cold eased. Days got longer. Sunlight lingered. Spring was coming. Not soon, but coming. Rosa's parents had become Kara's closest human allies. Her father, who'd sworn to kill any orc on sight, now worked alongside Thorgrim on construction projects. Her mother taught Kara human cooking, learned orc herb lore in return. They'd invited Kara to family meals so often it became routine. Invited Thorgrim too, once they saw him as the grandfather Rosa had adopted. And with spring's promise came new trouble. Different trouble. The kind Kara had been dreading. The war horns sounded on a Tuesday morning in late March. Iron Peak war horns. Multiple. Close. Coming from the west. Not a scouting party. An army. 20 warriors emerged from the tree line. Full war party, led by an orc Kara recognized. Gromash, recovered from the trial by combat wound. Promoted in Thorgrim's absence. Now war chief of the traditionalist Iron Peak faction. And he'd come for traitors. The entire village mobilized. 30 able fighters. 15 militia Kara had trained. Constance organizing defensive positions. But 30 humans against 20 orc warriors was bad math. Worse when you factored in orc size and strength advantage. Gromash stopped at speaking distance. Thorgrim the betrayer, Kara the coward. You're both marked, both sentenced, both deserving death. Come face justice or we'll burn this human village to ashes finding you. Kara stepped forward, armor borrowed from the village smithy, sword in hand, not the felling axe this time, real weapon. Thorgrim and I claim sanctuary here. We're protected by Pine Haven. You want us, you will have to go through them. Gladly, Gromash smiled. Vicious, hungry. This was what he'd been bred for. Combat, conquest, burning human settlements for the glory of it. We'll enjoy it. No, Thorgrim said. He'd emerged from his house, also armed, also armored. You'll face us. Combat trial, like you gave Kara. Us against your champions. You win, you take us. We win, you leave and never return. You're exiled. You don't get trials. Then you're here for slaughter, not justice. That the message you want to send that Iron Peak kills refugees in sanctuary. Attacks, human villages, unprovoked. What will the other clans say when word spreads? Gromash hesitated. Politics, inter-clan relations mattered. If Iron Peak was seen as violating sanctuary traditions, other clans might intervene, might see it as weakness, as dishonor of a different kind. Fine, he spat, trial by combat, but this time it's to the death. No yields, no mercy. You win, we leave. We win, you and the village goes untouched. Those are the terms. Accepted, Kara said before Constance could object. Before anyone could argue. This was her fight, her responsibility. Her chance to prove sanctuary meant something. Who fights, Gromash asked. Me and my father, Kara said. Against you and whomever you choose. Me and Vakra, Gromash said immediately. Same pair from last time. Except this time we finish it. Vakra stepped forward. Spear and shield, Healed from the trial, stronger, angrier, she looked at Kara with pure hate. You shamed me once. Won't happen twice. We'll see. They had 1 hour to prepare. Kara and Thorgrim used it to strategize. They'd never fought together. Father had trained daughter, but they'd never been partners. Now they had to be. I'm slower than I was, Thorgrim admitted. Wounds from the Civil War. Won't be at full strength. I'm faster than I was when we last fought. Months of recovery. Training. I'm maybe 85% now. Between us, that's enough. Grommash is overconfident. Vakra is precise but cautious. We use that. I draw Grommash. You handle Vakra. When opportunities present, we swap. Keep them off balance. And when it ohms to the killing blow, Thorgrim met her eyes. We do what's necessary. These aren't clan brothers anymore. These are warriors who'd burn innocence for tradition. We stop them. Permanently if required. The fight began at noon, clear sky. Cold air. 60 humans and 18 orcs watching two pairs decide the fate of a village and the meaning of sanctuary. Grommash charged immediately. Same tactic as before. Overwhelming force. But this time Thorgrim met him head-on. Experience versus raw power. They crashed together like mountains colliding. Axes against sword. Strength testing strength. Vakra circled Kara. Cautious. Remembering the last fight, remembering the loss. Not making the same mistakes. They traded strikes. Testing. Probing. Neither committing. Both waiting for the opening. Declan watched from the defensive line. Bow ready but knowing he couldn't interfere. This was trial by combat, sacred to orc law. Intervention would void the terms, would make Pine Haven legitimate targets. So he watched, trusted, hoped. Rosa was beside him, shouldn't have been there. Too young for violence, but she'd refused to hide. Kara will win, she whispered. Absolute certainty, child faith. I hope you're right, sweetling. Thorgrim and Grommash fought like old enemies with new grudges. Every strike carried weight beyond the physical. This was ideology made flesh, tradition versus reform, old ways versus new possibilities. They were evenly matched. Thorgrim's experience countering Grommash's youth and strength. Kara and Vakra were technical, precise. Two warriors who trained together using that knowledge to predict and counter. Spear thrust, sword parry, shield bash, dodge. The rhythm of fighters who knew each other too well. Neither could surprise the other. Neither could land the decisive blow. This is for the shame, Vakra hissed. Spear coming faster, angrier, for making me yield, for making me look weak. This is for survival, Kara replied. Calm, focused, for proving mercy is stronger than tradition. For protecting people who gave me a chance. They clashed harder, faster. Kara felt her conditioning, months of hunting, training, living instead of just surviving. She was stronger than the trial, faster, more confident. She pressed, forced Vakra back, broke her rhythm. Vakra stumbled. Small mistake, barely noticeable. Kara exploited it, sword slash across Vakra's shield arm. Not deep, but enough to weaken her defense, enough to shift the balance. Thorgrim was bleeding. Grommash had gotten through his guard, cut across the ribs, not fatal but painful, slowing him down, Asian wounds catching up. He couldn't sustain this, couldn't match Grommash indefinitely. Switch, Kara called. They'd practiced this. Swap opponents, reset the dynamic. Thorgrim disengaged, rolled left. Kara rolled right. Now Thorgrim faced Vakra. Kara faced Grommash. New matchup. Different problems. Grommash grinned. The coward who stabbed me. Time for payback. I'm not the warrior I was then, Kara said. I'm better. They fought, power versus speed, Grommash's axes versus Kara's sword. She couldn't match his strength, didn't try. Used mobility, made him chase, made him commit, made him frustrated. Just like before, just like the trial. He pushed harder, got sloppier, overextended on a massive overhead swing. Kara sidestepped, let momentum carry him past, slashed across his hamstring. Deep, crippling. Grommash roared, fell to one knee, tried to stand. Couldn't. The leg wouldn't hold. Vakra saw her partner fall, panicked, broke formation, rushed to help him, left herself open. Thorgrim didn't hesitate. Sword thrust through the gap in her armor, through the ribs, into the lung. Vakra gasped, blood on her lips. She looked down, surprised, then fell. Grumash stared at Vakra's body, at his fallen partner, at impossible defeat. No, he whispered, this isn't how it ends. Warriors of Iron Peak don't lose to exiles and cowards. Yes, Kara said quietly, they do, when the exiles fight for something that matters more than tradition. She raised her sword. Grumash raised his axes, defiant to the end. They clashed one final time. Kara was faster, better, stronger in the ways that mattered. Her sword found the gap in his defense, found his throat, found the ending. Grumash fell, died. War chief of the traditionalists defeated by the warrior he'd called coward, by the exile he'd tried to execute. Poetic, tragic, inevitable. Silence. Then the remaining 18 Iron Peak warriors looked at each other, looked at their fallen leaders, looked at Kara and Thorgrim standing victorious, covered in blood but alive. Proof that something had changed, that the old ways didn't guarantee victory anymore. Leave, Kara said, voice carrying authority. Command. In Iron Peak, what happened here? Tell them sanctuary matters. Tell them exiles who fight for protection are stronger than warriors who fight for conquest. Tell them the future is coming, whether tradition accepts it or not. The warriors left, carried their dead, disappeared into the forest, defeated, uncertain, questioning everything they'd been taught. Pinehaven erupted, cheers, relief, gratitude. Kara and Thorgrim had defended the village, had proven their worth in blood and combat, had earned their place beyond any remaining doubt. Rosa ran to Kara, hugged her despite the blood. You won, I knew you would. Kara knelt, held the child, felt the weight of what she'd become. Protector, defender, someone worth saving and someone who saved others. We won Sweetling, all of us, together. That night the village celebrated. Feast from whatever food they had, stories shared, barriers broken. Kara sat with Declan and Thorgrim and Constance and Rosa's family and dozens of others, human and orc, former enemies, current neighbors, future friends. You know what this means, Constance said. Word will spread about the battle, about orcs defending a human village, about sanctuary that works. Other exiles will come, other refugees, looking for the same chance you got. Good, Kara said. Let them come. Let them prove mercy works. Let them build the future we're all stumbling toward. Declan raised his cup, water not alcohol, to mercy, to choosing compassion when it costs something, to proving the past doesn't define the future. They drank, celebrated, lived, not just survived, actually lived, with connection and community and the messy, complicated beauty of people choosing to see each other as human despite every cultural reason not to. Later, after the celebration wound down, Kara found Thorgrim outside, looking at the stars. You fought well, she said. We fought well, together, as we should have always fought. Father, Kara said, using the term for the first time since exile. I forgive you, not because you have earned it, though you have, but because carrying hate was killing me slowly. Mercy isn't just for others, it's for ourselves too. Thorgrim's eyes watered, copper reflecting starlight. Thank you, daughter. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll spend my life trying to be worthy of it. They stood together, father and daughter, exiles who'd become protectors, warriors who'd learned that strength wasn't the same as violence, that honor could mean choosing conscience over tradition, that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was show kindness to someone the world said didn't deserve it. 6 months later in September, Pinehaven had transformed. 5 orc families had integrated, refugees from Iron Peak Civil War. Seeking the sanctuary Kara and Thorgrim had proven was possible. The village population had doubled. 120 residents, now 60 humans, 60 orcs, all learning to build something new together. 3 mixed species marriages had formed. 12 children growing up knowing both languages, both cultures, both ways of seeing the world. Not perfect. Arguments still flared. prejudices still surfaced, but they worked through them. Together, Kara had become defense chief, position created specifically for her. Recognition that protection required someone who understood both cultures. She trained an integrated militia, humans and orcs fighting side by side, defense tactics that combined both species' strengths. Thorgrim worked as village carpenter, built homes for new refugees, taught young orcs and humans his craft, quiet redemption through useful labor. He'd also become the unofficial grandfather to half the village children, Rosa chief among them. Rosa, now 9, was learning both human and orc fighting styles from Kara, learning carpentry from Thorgrim, learning to navigate a world more complicated and more beautiful than the one her parents had known. She called Kara Aunt Kara with the casual confidence of someone who'd never known a time when orcs were just enemies. One afternoon in late September, exactly 2 years after Declan had found Kara dying against a boulder, they gathered in the village center, the entire community, 120 people, to plant a tree, memorial for the warriors who died, for Mograth, the Bull Surtha, Grimhan, and young Tornak, who'd fallen during Kara's frozen moment, for Gramash and Vakra, who died defending tradition they believed in, for all the losses that had brought them here. They died because of choices, Kara said, holding Rosa's hand, Declan beside her, Thorgrim helping plant, the village watching. My choice, their choices, choices that led to violence and death. I can't undo that, can't bring them back, but I can honor them by living differently, by choosing mercy and protection instead of conquest and revenge. They planted an oak in the village center, strong, enduring, a symbol of growth from grief, its branches reaching toward the future, while roots anchored deep in shared pain, deep enough to weather any storm that came. As the sun set over Piney Haven, over the village that had become home, Kara looked around, at the mixed community, at the children playing together regardless of skin color, at humans and orcs sharing meals and stories and lives, at the tangible proof that individuals choosing mercy could create change that armies couldn't force. She'd been left to starve, sentenced to death for growing a conscience, and she'd survived. Not just survived, thrived, built a life better than the one she'd lost, found family in enemies, found purpose in protection, found redemption in proving that the past didn't have to define the future. Declan stood beside her, the human who'd saved her when he had every reason not to, who'd taught her that mercy was strength, who'd become the brother she'd never had. What are you thinking, as he asked? I'm thinking, Kara said slowly, that sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones we expect. Sometimes they're the ones who have every reason not to. And sometimes when we're very lucky, we save them right back. Did you save me? You were dying too, just slower, just quieter. Dying of isolation and grief and the conviction that connection was pain. I think maybe we saved each other. Declan smiled, genuine, warm, the smile of someone who'd relearned joy after years of forgetting it existed. Yeah, I think maybe we did. They stood together as darkness fell, two exiles who'd become pillars of a community built on mercy instead of hate, on seeing people instead of enemies, on choosing compassion when it cost something, because that was the only choice that changed anything. The wooden rabbit Declan had carved for Emily sat on Kara's mantle now, next to the stone bear from Thorgrim, next to Rosa's clumsy first carving, symbols of past and present and future, of loss and redemption and hope. Because in the end, survival wasn't about being the strongest or the most prepared. It was about being willing to see someone suffering and say, not on my watch. Even when every instinct screamed to walk away, even when mercy cost something, even when the world said enemies couldn't become family, especially then. That was when mercy mattered most. That was when choosing compassion changed the world. One person, one decision, one act of impossible kindness at a time. And Kara Stoneheart, former warrior of Iron Peak, marked coward exiled daughter, had learned that lesson in the hardest way possible, had been shattered by it, rebuilt by it, transformed by it. Now she lived it, every day, teaching others, protecting the vulnerable, proving that the future could look different than the past if enough people chose to make it so. The stars came out above Pine Haven, the same stars that had watched her dying alone, The same stars that had witnessed her rescue. The same stars that would watch this impossible village continue growing. Continue proving that mercy worked. That integration was possible. That hope wasn't poison after all. Just medicine that took time to work. But when it did, when it finally took root and grew, it could change everything.